Before we get into the meat of this guide, let's start with the hook your video needs. When I talk to fellow history enthusiasts, there's one thing we all appreciate: the practical brilliance hidden inside the everyday struggles of the past. For soldiers in the Second World War, cooking wasn't just a routine, it was a battle within the battle. Food meant morale, survival, and a sense of humanity in places that tried to strip it away. And what always fascinates me is that some of the most clever cooking methods of the war didn't rely on stoves, oil, or even firewood. These were solutions forged under pressure, improvised in snowbound forests, ruined cities, foxholes soaked from days of rain, and trenches where fuel was more valuable than gold. Today, we're not romanticizing hardship. We're uncovering real tools, practical, functional hacks that worked then and still work now, especially for survivalists who like to test themselves beyond everyday comfort. So let's break down 4 forgotten Second World War cooking methods that delivered warm food against the odds, and how you can apply these tricks today with surprisingly little. One of the most widespread but least talked about methods soldiers used when they had almost no fuel was stone cooking. Infantrymen from both Allied and Axis units learned quickly that a single small fire could be stretched far beyond what it seemed capable of if you heated stones instead of constantly burning wood. Once the stones were hot, soldiers placed them into small metal tins, trench helmets, or improvised pots and used the radiant heat to slow-cook grains, soups, and even tough cuts of meat. The brilliance of this method is that it pushed a tiny flame into hours of usable heat. If you're applying this today, start with stones that are dry and not taken from riverbeds, since wet stones can crack or burst. Heat a few fist-sized ones until they're too hot to touch, transfer them into a metal container, then place your rations, beans, rice, broth, or anything stew-friendly on top. Cover the setup with cloth or leaves to trap heat. You'll end up with a slow-cooked meal using maybe 1/10 of the fuel you'd normally need. Modern survivalists can do this with camping mess tins or even a metal water bottle laid on its side. Soldiers used this trick in Italy, France, and the Pacific Islands, where firewood was unreliable or dangerously smoky. When oil wasn't available and soldiers couldn't risk smoke, small tin cup alcohol burners became a quiet lifesaver. These were made using ration tins, strips of cloth, and any high-proof liquid available: medical alcohol, cleaning fluid, or captured fuel. Commandos, scouts, and reconnaissance units favoured this method because it produced almost no visible smoke and created a stable flame hot enough to boil water or heat canned food. If you want to recreate this in a safe and practical way, use a small metal tin, coil a strip of cotton inside it, and saturate the cloth with rubbing alcohol. Light the top edge, and you'll get a steady, almost wind-resistant flame. Place a cup or small pan over it, and you have a functioning stove that weighs almost nothing. There's a reason British SOE agents and American paratroopers relied on these burners. They were simple, discreet, and effective. In survival situations today, this method can boil snow into drinkable water or cook simple meals without producing the column of smoke that a normal fire gives away. Another overlooked method involved heating metal scraps. Bayonets, engine parts, steel plates, even empty ammo magazines, until they glowed, then dropping them into water to boil it without burning additional fuel. Frontline mechanics and armoured units used this constantly because they had access to heated engine blocks and exhaust systems. Infantrymen learned it too whenever they stumbled across battlefield debris that could hold heat longer than stone. To try this in a controlled modern setting, heat a thick piece of steel over a small flame. Once it's scorching, drop it into a pot of water. The water will jump to boiling almost instantly. From there, cooking pasta, sterilizing medical tools, or warming canned rations becomes almost effortless. Soldiers liked this trick because it allowed them to cook multiple batches using the same metal, reheating the scrap only as needed instead of feeding a fire non-stop. Today, if you've packed light or only have a small fuel source, this technique lets you stretch every bit of heat you generate. It may surprise some people, but solar cooking wasn't invented recently. World War II troops used it whenever the climate allowed. In North Africa, the Mediterranean, and parts of the Pacific, soldiers experimented with reflective surfaces to concentrate sunlight and heat food without fire at all. Helmets were polished on the inside to enhance reflection, and signal mirrors were arranged into crude parabolic setups. While it didn't fry steaks, it was enough to warm canned meat, soften hard biscuits, and heat water to comfortable temperatures. To apply this today, angle any reflective metal surface toward the sun. Place your food in a dark container so it absorbs the heat faster, and allow time for the warmth to build. This is slow, but completely fuel-free and silent. In desert survival situations or high-sun mountain environments, it's surprisingly effective. Soldiers used it not only for cooking, but also to avoid giving away their position with smoke, one of the biggest risks when operating in open terrain. These 4 World War II methods worked because they relied on ingenuity instead of resources, and the modern survivalists can still put them to use with minimal gear. They're quiet, fuel-efficient, and proven under some of the harshest conditions in human history. If you want more deep-dive World War II survival knowledge like this, make sure you subscribe to Legacy of Survival and share this guide with someone who appreciates history that still has real-world practicality.